Hello, listeners. You're listening to KRUI 89.7 FM, your sound alternative. I'm Amman, the news director here, with my co-host Julia Wilson in the IMU studios, and today we'll be interviewing City Council candidate Clara Reynen. Clara Reynen.
Clara Reynen. We Reynen. I always say it's like the bread, like rye bread, Reynen. I think if the Y and the E were in opposite spots, it would make more sense. But no one had the wherewithal to spell it that way.
Okay, I think I mispronounced Bruce Teague's name incorrectly for the entire interview.
That's funny,
and that's documented now. So I don't want that to happen again. Let's get into it. Reynen. Reynen is an artist, writer, and community organizer, and professional librarian. She attended the University of Iowa for her undergrad, where she received her Bachelor's of Arts in Theater and Religious Studies. Reynen is in her final year as a graduate student here at the university and is an active member of the Campaign to Organize Graduate Students, also known as COGS. She's been endorsed by the YDSA, Progressive Victory, and sitting councilmen, including Oliver Weiland and Laura Berges. I hope I said their name correctly.
Berges, but
Berges.
yeah.
Everyone has the last name on city council. I can't say it.
They should just put like pronunciation guides like next to everybody's names. Mm-hmm. That'd be much more considerate of them.
I think so.
Take note.
All right, I guess we'll just jump right into it. What inspired you to run for city council this year? Like, did you have a moment that really pushed you to say, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the moment that I realized that something needed to change in local politics was definitely while I was still getting my grad degree in library science. A lot of what it was that at the time, the state was really starting to attack the rights of transgender folks here in Iowa. And I went to a ton of city council meetings. My friends went to city council meetings, and we tried every tactic imaginable to try to get city councilors to listen to us, to do something. And they would say all the time, we hear you, we see you, I'm sorry this is happening, but we can't do anything. And at that same moment, I was learning how to be a librarian, and it was being stressed to me over and over and over again that if you are in a job where public service is a component of it, you don't stop at anything to get people the resources they need, even if that means you can't accomplish it the same day they ask for it or the same day they request it, but you follow up with them. You show them that you're trying to find it until you do find it or accomplish whatever that is. And so I think it was just that juxtaposition of seeing in front of me such lack of commitment to meeting people's needs while I was learning how crucial that was at the same time is really what sparked me to consider running. And then this year there were folks who were up for re-election who I didn't think had represented Iowa Cityans very well. And so I thought, even though it's my last year of grad school, it's really important that we get these folks voted out. And so that's why I decided to run this year.
As a graduate student at the university, you were heavily involved in labor organizations through the COGS. How will your pro-labor stance influence your approach as a city council member?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've learned organizing with COGS in particular is just that when you are fighting against a system that does not want you to succeed, it requires a ton of persistence. It requires not stopping at anything. And I think seeing how hard folks involved in the union have worked to sign up new members. Like right now, it's our membership drive week that we call Blitz. And we have folks walking through every building on campus multiple times over the course of 2 weeks to sign up new members for the union. And I think just seeing how dedicated people are to improving the material conditions of workers has been really inspiring to remind me to keep going and to keep pushing. And I think that walking into city council with that same attitude, knowing that I'm not going to be able to accomplish everything right away, but that doesn't mean I give up, I think that same attitude will serve really well in such a hostile state, particularly towards marginalized groups.
Some of your opponents have made it a large part of their platform to market all Iowa City has to offer, especially to business interests. On the flip side of that labor involvement, say I'm an entrepreneur or a skilled worker looking to set up shop or build a career. Make your pitch to me as to why I should locate in Iowa City.
Ooh, that's a good question. Y'all are coming in with like the good questions. My pitch for either an entrepreneur or a skilled laborer is that Iowa City, even though it's, one of the most expensive cities to live in Iowa, compared to the national cost of living, it's lower. We have a lot of amazing amenities that you would find in larger cities that are more expensive, like the art scene, like the university, for example. I think especially for young families, knowing that their kids can attend college classes while they're still in high school is really appealing. I think knowing that they can go to Hampshire is really appealing. You get a lot of kind of like the big city feel in a small connected town, and I think that's great. And in addition to that, I think especially with the work that the Iowa City Downtown District is doing, I think they're doing a great job of really trying to make this a place where small businesses can take off. I know we see a lot of predatory landlords downtown who make it hard for small business owners to set up shop. But I think that the folks who are at Iowa City Downtown District really want to prioritize that. And so I think if you have city councilors who aren't already owning large companies or running large corporations, or owning multiple properties as landlords, I think you see more of that incentive to fight for small businesses rather than just allowing any business that will bring economic development.
Speaking of economic development, technology, data centers, and AI infrastructure have been emerging issues across the Midwest and municipalities. A piece mentioned you want to AI-proof Iowa City. What does AI-proofing mean for you?
AI-proofing means a few different things. I think you can kind of approach it from two angles. There's that infrastructure side, like you were talking about, and then there's the practical, technical application side. So from that infrastructure point, making sure that we're not building data centers here in Iowa City. It would be really horrible for the water quality. Even though there aren't any data centers near us, there have been studies to show that prices of electric bills have been going up across the nation due to the proliferation of data centers. And so I think if we want to keep the cost of living down in Iowa City, we have to make sure that our utility bills are staying as low as possible. And we need to protect our water quality. And I am really proud that even though I haven't been elected yet, the Johnson County Board of Supervisors agreed kind of informally in a work session to put a moratorium on building data centers in unincorporated Johnson County. And so that means that if somebody is on city council, myself, who would really prioritize that, I think it'd be possible to make sure that there are no data centers being built in Johnson County. And then from that practical application side, I want to make sure that the city is not using AI in any way that would impact folks' quality of life. So, for example, in New York City, the Administration for Children's Services, which is kind of like Child Protective Services, they've been using AI algorithms to flag high-risk families for years. And whenever you're using an AI program to track crime or to predict potential crime, it relies on historically racist data, right? And so you're just seeing that marginalization and that prejudice towards single mothers, people of color, particularly Black families. You're seeing those flagging incidences happen at really disproportionate rates. And so I think it's really important to protect people from the harmful effects of AI, which includes surveillance and a whole host of other things.
Yeah. So many residents in LGBTQ, immigrant, and other minority communities have expressed concern about the discrimination and reduced protections at the higher level of government. At the same time, some worry that strong local equity policies could affect the funding relationships. If elected, how would you navigate that balance, protecting community members while maintaining essential resources for the city?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's an important one. I think it's a hard question because what I have seen is that in cases where like one of my inspirations to run was the fact that I wanted the city to protect trans people and they weren't doing it precisely because they said they were worried that it would affect people, or that it would affect other funding sources. And in my opinion, if fear of the state government is what keeps us from acting on a local level, then I don't know what the point of local government is in the first place, right? In Iowa, Iowa has this concept of home rule, which is essentially the idea that municipalities know what's best for them. And you have a little more control in states with home rule over local policy than you do in other states. And so I think that we can kind of take a short-term and a long-term approach. And so if we implemented a policy to protect, for example, protect immigrants, like we saw in Chicago, the mayor of Chicago implemented ICE-free zones, right? Say we did something like that here in Iowa City and the state retaliated by pulling funding from, they already pulled funding from the libraries, which was going to be my first example. But, say they pulled funding from some other sort of essential service, right? Like, we can fight that. We have mechanisms to fight that, whether it's judicially, and we could get an injunction placed to prevent that funding source from being cut while that lawsuit is ongoing. I think a lot of times there's this fear-mongering tactic where the idea is that the second the state pulls funding, it's gone immediately and there's nothing you can do to get it back. But a lot of times, like similarly to what we're seeing with the State Historical Society location here in Iowa City, a lawsuit can put a hold, it can put a pause on whatever that retaliation or that retaliatory act would be. So if the state tried to pull funding and Iowa City fought back with a lawsuit or with some other type of legal action, we could halt that while that lawsuit was taking place. And I always think, there is no cost too great to protect people. And if that means that, we have to put in extra time and work as a city council, I'm okay with that because I know what I'm getting myself into by saying I want to be on city council. And I want to be on city council because I want to keep people safe and I want to make people feel like they are safe in our community and can belong here without feeling like they have to look over their shoulder every 10 seconds for an ICE agent. And so if that means I'm sacrificing my own time, I'm fine with that. Like, I'm a cisgender white lady, I'm chilling. I'm ready to put in the time. It's literally the least I can do.
Mm-hmm. We'll keep on themes with funding. Between the end of the American Rescue Plan, state limits on municipalities' taxation, and broader economic uncertainty, Iowa City's fiscal stability is under pressure. The council has proposed the local option sales tax, or LOST, which voters will decide on this November. Do you support this proposal? And if it passes, how would you prioritize the new revenue, especially that half is marked, I think, immediately for property tax relief?
Yeah, that's a great question and something I've been hoping more folks would start asking because every city council candidate, the incumbents and the challengers, we're all in favor of the LOST measure. On its face, that would not be my first route to tax folks, right? Like, it's a regressive tax form. I would rather raise taxes on wealthy individuals. We can't do that here, right? So the LOST is kind of the next best thing. And I think because everybody is in favor of it, it is important to ask what we would do with it. So of course, there's that 50% that's earmarked that we can't touch. And admittedly, this was a really inspiring answer from Amy Hospodarsky, who's running for District B. She mentioned during the League of Women Voters Forum that she wants to think of all of those funds as additive. So not like we're getting this money, which means we can reallocate the money we previously set aside for something else. The way she phrased it was she wants to keep the money that's already going towards those causes and essentially add that lost sales tax revenue on top of it. And I completely agree with that. And so some of the first things I would prioritize are making sure we're using the money that's set aside for affordable housing to adopt a housing first approach, very similar to Oliver Weiland, who's on council already. In Iowa City in particular, with Shelter House, they have 2 permanent supportive housing apartment buildings already. And out of everyone who's entered permanent supportive housing there, 98.9% of those folks have stayed housed for at least a year. And on a national level, A housing first approach for folks who receive those services reduces their emergency room visits by up to 57%. And so if we're concerned about how much money folks are spending on, on their taxes for things like Medicare and Medicaid, which, first of all, I think, like I said, taking care of people doesn't have a price tag. But if that is a concern of people, even though they are going to have this additional tax, it will actually save them money in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Housing affordability is perhaps one of the most prominent issues this election, with every candidate proposing different strategies to address supply. Some candidates have pointed to tools like TIF districts and density bonuses as potential strategies. What tools or collaborations would you prioritize, and how does your vision differ from the current City Council's approach on housing?
I really like that you use the word collaboration in that question because admittedly, probably one of the reasons why I don't think of some of those economic incentives first is because I'm not a business person. I'm not a landlord like some of the other councilors who are up for re-election, right? I don't jump straight to the economics because when it comes to that, there are city staff who are experts in that field, right? And so I'm really thinking about what is my unique approach, what are my areas of expertise, and how can I add that to the knowledge that city staff already has. So in particular, I really want to emphasize strengthening the Iowa City Tenants Union. I'm a very vocal proponent of unionizing, whether it's tenants or a workplace. I think that there are so many landlords in Iowa City who are completely out of control and run unchecked. And that's incredibly unfair, not just to college students, but to folks who live in senior housing. I've heard from a lot of folks in senior housing that it is completely unaffordable and landlords don't feel like they have to take care of any issues. And so if I was on city council, I would want everyone to know that there's a Iowa City Tenants Union. And if folks did decide, hey, this landlord has been pulling... Can I swear on this or not? I won't. 10 p.m. I won't. Okay. That's a good reminder. If people decided to rent strike, great, right? I would do everything I could to direct Iowa City Police Department not to enforce evictions, to make sure that we are protecting renters who are doing what they need to do to organize and collectively bargain against their landlords who are exploiting them for profit. And aside from that, on a slightly lighter note, I would like to see every single apartment building in Iowa City have a community bulletin board within like 10 feet of the mailboxes. I think that's such an easy way to get news out. Imagine if every apartment building in Iowa City had flyers for the Iowa City Tenants Union and flyers for the community food bank and for the for the University of Iowa food bank, right? Like we could build so much more community if we just made every landlord buy a, $20 bulletin board and hang it up. It's such an easy and low cost way to allow renters to have more agency and autonomy.
I hope this doesn't violate my journalistic integrity, but when I came to this university, I really appreciated all the community flyers all over like the walls and stuff. Next time?
Oh, sorry. We have to share. You've stated that public safety is more than just policing. In what ways is our current system falling short, and how would you expand?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we are not doing ourselves any favors by having on Iowa City's organizational chart a police department instead of a public safety department. Regardless of what my own feelings are about police, honestly, not a fan of police. Police personally make me feel more unsafe than protected, and I think that's due to a lot of experiences I've had with police where I've seen them brutalize my friends during protests. Regardless of that, though, there are, lots of community members who think that the police are a vital part of our community. And in some circumstances, they do reduce violent crime through investigations, prevention, that sort of stuff. And so I think for me, first things first, super easy switch. Let's not call it a police department. Let's call it a Department of Public Safety, right? Because that already expands our definition beyond policing alone. And as far as the Iowa City Police Department goes, they are making steps in the right direction. I have to give them credit for that, right? They have a community outreach department. They have a downtown community liaison. It would be my personal preference, and I plan to push very hard for this, that if that community liaison remains an appointed police officer, I do not want them to be armed when they are performing their duties as a community liaison. Why are they in the first place if they're a community liaison, right? I was really surprised when I learned that they were armed when they were in those duties. I would personally prefer to see it be somebody through, community crisis services, for example, or another local community-based service rather than the police department. But in addition to that, I think when we think about safety, we know that, for example, housing folks, like a housing first approach, reduces crime because keeping people housed is keeping people safe. And so I think when we think about safety as this really reductive view that focuses only on crime, we are reducing people to the hardest and worst moments in their life when they've had to make decisions that are difficult or not productive or not healthy in order to protect themselves, right? Like, I have met folks who are unhoused who will commit petty crimes simply to be arrested so they have somewhere warm to sleep that night. That's heartbreaking, and I don't think anyone should ever be put in that position. So I really want to expand it so it can be more encompassing of multiple factors that make our community safe, including things like COVID mitigation, right? Like, every single city building should have HEPA filters. That keeps us safe. Oh, I could talk about this for a long time, so I'll probably end it there.
Earlier this month, the Johnson County Sheriff withdrew from plans for a shared jail and law enforcement facility. He told the press discussions remain open after a university survey showed rising public support. Would you support revisiting this project? Why or why not?
I would not support revisiting a joint facility between the Sheriff's Department and the Iowa City Police Department. First and foremost, I think fundamentally, I am opposed to consolidating powers that have the authority to carry out lethal force. I've heard so many times people try to dismiss that by saying, Clara, they're not combining operations, they're just sharing space. But I've lived with roommates. I feel like it takes 2 months before you start picking up the speech patterns of your roommates. Even my students who I teach, I'm picking up the Gen Z slang they use every day. And I don't even know what half of it means. It's just wormed its way into my vocabulary. And so I think even if we're not combining operations, we would still see the culture from the Sheriff's Department rub off on Iowa City police officers. And like I said, as hesitant as I am to say that a police force is doing something right, the Iowa City Police Department is the least bad police force in the area. And I want to keep it that way. And so I think that giving the Iowa City Police Department their own space is a much better way for them to pursue their goals for community investment separately from the sheriff's office. Additionally, aside from that Iowa City component, I think the numbers of beds that they're asking for in the jail is just completely unreasonable. I don't know why they think we need 140 beds. I don't know why they think we need 120 beds, right? Crime rates in Johnson County are going down. And even though you'll hear time and time and time again that it's more expensive to move folks out of the county to house them in other jails, it's not, because that cost that you see includes the cost of staffing. So it's a really misleading number. Granted, it is much harder for folks to visit their family members and their loved ones if they're housed in a different county. But I would say, let's take that $100 million we're willing to invest in another jail and use that towards diversion programs. Let's use that towards housing first. Let's use that towards things that actually reduce crime in a sustainable way.
Mm-hmm. Just a few more questions here. Climate action is a major piece of Iowa City's strategic plan in the coming years. Which local initiatives do you think have worked well so far? And where could the city improve?
Yeah, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I think if the city wants to improve, making sure data centers aren't being built here is a great first step. Mm-hmm. I also think that in a roundabout way, shifting from a private approach to utilities through a private company like Mid-American, shifting to a public utilities model would actually give us a lot more control. There was a question at the League of Women Voters Forum about why so much of the climate action plan for Iowa City revolves around Mid-American Energy instead of Iowa City's efforts. And that's because that's who provides the utilities for folks who live here in Iowa City. And if we were a public utilities provider, I think that would also give us a lot more grant opportunities to provide grants for things like installing geothermal in your homes or installing new windows. For example, something like that, like installing new windows, the city already does have grants for that. So I think in that sense, the city is doing that really well. If anything, I think we could beef up that communications department. And I've heard from a lot of city workers that there's a lot of redundancy within City Hall, which is just because Iowa City has grown fast and technology has changed rapidly. And so if we really focus on making sure that City Hall is working efficiently and without redundancy, that will free up so much time for folks who have worked at City Hall for a long time to bring in new initiatives that are exciting.
Potentially a Reynen version of Doge.
Oh my God.
Okay. Just like what's like.
You're not the first person to say that either, which is why it's so funny.
Just like two more here. What does a thriving Iowa City look like to you in 5 to 10 years? What are the key hallmarks you'd like to see as a result of your time if you're elected?
Yeah, I think a thriving Iowa City is an Iowa City where every community member knows how to get involved, how to access the resources that they need, and how to go about using those resources. So there was a Hawk the Vote forum the other night, and there was a really great question from a student about success. Like, how would you define success? And for me, it really is that piece of everybody in Iowa City should know what initiatives are going on and how to access them. And if that means that, like, I don't think I'm successful as a city councilor because only 97% of folks know what's happening instead of 100%, like, I'm fine with not saying I'm successful if that's the case, like, whatever I can do to put us in a position to move forward is what I want to do. Like, ultimately, I want to know that Iowa City is a place where I could raise my own kids, where I could have a family and make sure that they're safe. I want to do that. And so a thriving Iowa City to me would be an Iowa City where bus services are not limited to the weekdays and Saturdays, right? I want bus services every day of the week, overnight buses, continued fare free. I want Iowa City to be accessible. Before we even think about building, new businesses on the outskirts of town, or before we think about building new businesses, even if it is density infill, right? Like, Iowa City needs to be accessible first. There are so many places in Iowa City that community members can't access because they're not accessible. And so I think addressing that first, that could take 5 years if we do it with a slow and measured approach. And if that's my claim to fame for Iowa City, like, I'd be so thrilled. I almost threw in an F-bomb there. That's how thrilled I'd be. I had to stop myself.
Finally, where can listeners go if they want to learn more about your campaign? And are there any upcoming events you'd like to shout out?
Great question. If folks want to learn more about my campaign, they can go to my website, which is claraforiowacity.com. They can also check out my Instagram, which is, oh God, I should know what it is off the top of my head. I think my Instagram is just Clara for Iowa City because no one wants to go to an Instagram with a super long handle. Yeah, Clara for Iowa City is my Instagram. Wait, Clara for Iowa City is my website too. My last name's not in there if I said it. I've gotten way too used to introducing myself with my last name, which I never had to do until I ran for city council. So claraforiowacity.com, Clara for Iowa City on Instagram. Upcoming events, this Saturday, which is the 1st of November, from 11:30 to 1 p.m., myself, Amy Hospodarski, and Travis Terrell, who's running for Iowa's 1st Congressional District, will all be at Kitty Corner Social Lounge downtown, where we'll all be speaking to community members before sending ourselves and our volunteers out on a last door knocking push. So if folks want to door knock for me this last weekend, that'd be awesome. We're also going to be door knocking on Sunday the 2nd, leaving from Kindred Coffee at 3 p.m. And then on Tuesday night, there's going to be an election watch party. I'm not totally sure where that's going to be yet. We're still working on that, but I'll put it on my Instagram once I know.
Clara Reynen, thank you for sitting down with us and discussing these important issues.
Anytime.
Thank you for listening.
Yay.